On the night of January 19, 1990, the Kashmir Valley echoed with a sound that signaled the end of life as the minority knew it. From mosque loudspeakers, a series of demands rang out across the frozen air: convert to Islam, leave the valley, or be killed. These threats targeted the Kashmiri Pandits. This Hindu Brahmin community is among the original inhabitants of the valley, with a recorded history in the region spanning thousands of years. For centuries, the Pandits lived as a small but stable minority in their ancestral homeland. Census data from the late 19th century through the mid-20th century shows they consistently accounted for about 4 to 5% of the valley's population. Between January and March 1990, the Kashmiri Pandit population line virtually disappeared. An estimated 90,000 to 150,000 people fled for their lives. Following that line to the present day, it never recovers. Only about 3,000 Pandit families remain in the valley today. The sudden collapse of the social order effectively erased a centuries-old community from the valley in a matter of weeks. The tension had been building for decades, fueled by 1950s land reforms that stripped many Pandits of their property, and the rigged state elections of 1987. These events left the Muslim majority deeply frustrated with the Indian government. That frustration eventually transformed into an armed insurgency against the state. By 1989, the valley was in the grip of a violent uprising. Militant groups like the JKLF and Hizbul Mujahideen took control of the streets. While their stated goal was political independence, their tactics quickly took on a radical anti-Hindu character. Starting in late 1989, these groups began executing prominent members of the Pandit community. One of the first was Tika Lal Toplu, a high court lawyer and political leader, gunned down in broad daylight. The killings soon targeted other pillars of the community, including Judge Neelkamp Ganju and the director of the local television station, Lhasa Kool. These assassinations were designed to do more than just kill individuals. They served as a message. By removing the community's leaders, the militants induced a state of mass panic among the civilian population. As the violence peaked, the state's security apparatus crumbled. In many areas, local police deserted their posts, leaving the minority community entirely without protection, despite the heavy presence of the Indian military. In the midst of this chaos, the central government sent in Governor Jagmohan to restore order. His arrival was met with a total breakdown of trust between the administration and the terrified public. Fearing for their lives, families began a mass flight. Most left in the middle of the night in whatever transport they could find, hoping to escape the valley undetected. Many families left their keys with Muslim neighbors, fully expecting to return once the violence subsided. Instead, they ended up permanently abandoning their businesses, orchards, and ancestral homes. The choice for the Pandits had become a matter of survival. With the state unable to protect them and militants targeting their leaders, flight was the only remaining option. The families traded the cool mountains of Kashmir for the intense heat of refugee camps in Jammu and Delhi. They lived in squalid tents, facing a sudden drop in living standards and a complete loss of their previous social standing. This diagram outlines the international legal framework for an internally displaced person, or IDP. This status is reserved for people forced to flee their homes who remain within their own country, and it triggers specific rights to humanitarian aid and international protection. But the Indian government does not use that label. Instead, it officially classifies the Pandits as migrants. This diagram shows how that distinction matters. As migrants, they are denied the international legal standing and UN protections that would come with IDP status. This choice of words is a calculated administrative decision. Formally recognizing the community as IDPs would invite international observers to investigate the situation in Kashmir, which the government considers a strictly internal matter. By maintaining the migrant label, the state frames the exodus as a voluntary departure rather than a forced expulsion. This bureaucratic distinction effectively limits the community's access to international aid and legal accountability for their displacement. 35 years later, an entire generation has grown up entirely in exile. For those born outside the valley, their homeland is a place of stories rather than a lived experience. The physical evidence of their life in Kashmir is fading. Many of the homes left behind have been stripped of their doors and windows. looted of their belongings, or set on fire, leaving only bare shells behind. There is a deeper loss occurring. Without a cohesive community living together in the valley, the Pandits are seeing their shared language and ancestral traditions begin to fade as they adapt to the cultures of the cities where they now live. While the flight of 1990 allowed the Kashmiri Pandits to survive physically, it began a different kind of struggle. Decades into their exile, the community remains in a state of limbo, fighting to preserve an identity that has no physical home to return to.